This is Steve. We are live on the meeting and on Facebook.
Okay, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Community Forum, a collective understanding of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Now, today, we're going to start off our day with a welcome from our interim executive director, Mary Engelman. Next, you will hear from Charles Schroeder, who will be our facilitator today, who will lead us through our program today. He will introduce our different divisions you will see from each of leaderships of each of divisions, who will then subsequently, we will end our day with a panel discussion for our featured division, which is the Community Engagement Division. But first, a couple of things about our presentation today. For the best accessibility experience with captions, we recommend that you join Zoom in order to view reliable, accurate captions. The link to join us on Zoom can be found on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/MDCR. Then scroll down to our event posting. Also, if you should have any questions, please post your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And now I have the opportunity to welcome and introduce our interim executive director, Mary Engelman.
Thank you, Tony. As Tony said, this is Mary Engelman. I am the interim executive director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, and I am so pleased that our team will give you a glimpse into what they do every day, all day long. This is an opportunity for you to see how the Michigan Department of Civil Rights is there for you, that serves you, and will be a place that you can go to when discrimination happens. That's right, you have someone supporting you. And so with that, sit back and enjoy and listen and learn and also take notes and take down numbers so that you know where to reach when you have challenges. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary. And next, I would like to introduce our facilitator for the day, Mr. Charles Schroeder.
Thank you, Tony, and welcome to my colleagues to this forum and everyone watching this presentation. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to provide a department overview and just briefly describe our jurisdiction. If you could advance the slide. So while you're going to hear from representatives from each of our divisions, we are all working in concert. All the divisions work really on the same goal, and that's our mission to secure the full and equal enjoyment of civil rights in Michigan by eliminating unlawful discrimination, assuring equal protection, and effectively managing and embracing diversity. And we do that in three ways. First being by education. We're of the thought that if people are educated about the law, they're less apt to violate it. And we offer informational and training sessions throughout the state. The next being investigative, or our enforcement unit, where they hear allegations of unlawful discrimination. Complaints are taken and investigations ensue into the matters. All the while, our investigators and staff are working to resolve matters where they can. And engagement, and you'll hear more about that in the discussion about the Community Engagement Division, the way that they are a physical presence in normal times, and in this COVID environment, more of a virtual presence throughout the state, hearing concerns in communities, trying to answer questions as best as we can as a division, and ushering them back to the department where they need to convey their allegations of unlawful discrimination and file complaints. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, our jurisdiction that we have here at the department, our charge is to enforce the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act and the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. And all of our protected classes and areas of discrimination that those provide coverage for are listed there. I won't go over all of them, but we wanted to show you the description of our jurisdiction so that you are aware that everyone, while in Michigan, has civil rights protections in virtually every facet of life that you'll encounter. And we want to make clear that although this applies to residents and citizens here of the US and in the state, it's also that our legislation and coverage is broader than that. So anybody visiting within the state is covered and has civil rights protections as well. So whether you come to Michigan to live, work, play, seek an education, and just visiting for a short or long period of time, you are protected by the state's civil rights statutes. Just to give you a general overview of the framework of our department, we think of and describe ourselves as the administrative arm of the Civil Rights Commission. You're going to hear more about the Michigan Civil Rights Commission from Sylvia Elliott coming up, but essentially they're the policy-making body, and we like to say we do the work of the commission. So we are roughly 90 plus employees strong throughout 3 offices within the state, that being our Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Detroit offices. Those are our brick and mortar locations. However, again, in this COVID environment, we're all virtually exclusively working remotely to serve the needs of the state of Michigan. And I say small but mighty department because we're just that. Although we have less than 100 employees covering the entire state, including the Upper Peninsula, we have a team of professionals who, again, are passionate about the work they do and are dedicated in seeing our mission through. With that, I will now ask that Sylvia Elliott turn on her video so we can hear more about the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sylvia Elliott. I'm the Special Advisor to the Commission. Let me introduce you to the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. So why does Michigan have a Civil Rights Commission? I like to say that just like the events of this year, where we see people marching and protesting following the death of George Floyd, they're protesting and marching for change, for police reform, for equality, for Black Lives Matter. Well, in the 1960s, the civil rights movement also saw Americans marching and protesting for change. There was the 1963 March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King, marching for civil and economic rights for African Americans, as well as an end to racism. And of course, we all remember that infamous Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama on March 1965, when Congressman John Lewis led the March for Voting Rights. So it's in this context of the 1960s that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission was born. At that time, Michigan was a very progressive state, and Michigan citizens wanted protections against discrimination in all areas of their lives, in employment, in housing, education, government services, and public accommodations, meaning no discrimination in restaurants, in movie theaters, in public restrooms. So the commission was formed, and the commission today consists of 8 members. They are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. No more than 4 members can be from the same political party. That's to ensure that it is an independent, bipartisan commission. And each member serves a staggered 4-year term. For more information on the current individual commissioners, you may find that on our website at www.michigan.gov/MDCR. Click on the Michigan Civil Rights tab. So, what does the commission do for you and for me? The commission has broad powers, and it is their duty to investigate alleged discrimination against any person, just as Charles said, and to secure equal protection of the Michigan civil rights laws. A few other duties include setting policy for the Department of Civil Rights, issuing the final decision and order on civil rights complaints of discrimination. The commission can also award monetary damages to individuals who are harmed by civil rights discrimination. The commission holds hearings on topics of concern to citizens of Michigan, and commission orders carry the force of law unless and until they are overturned by a court. Next slide, please. Highlighting some of the recent commission actions is the interpretive statement regarding the meaning of sex in the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act is intended to protect everyone. And this interpretive statement issued by the commission in 2018 clarifies that under the language in the statute, because of sex, it includes protections based on gender identity and sexual orientation. And the department will accept complaints filed on that basis. The Flint Water Crisis Report, a systemic racism through the lens of Flint. The Flint Water Crisis Report captured the what and the why of what happened to the people in the city of Flint. It was their testimony and their opportunity to tell the story of what they had to live through. And just like the next item, the MCR petition fraud, the testimony provides a context or a history from which many lawsuits and court cases find their foundation. This report and the testimonies that the commission gives shares with the public the history of what's going on in Michigan. It preserves that history. Currently, the commission is working on the education report. Education is a civil right. And how timely is this given the education crisis as we're dealing with education during the times of COVID? Just a few highlights of what the commission does for you and I. Thank you. Charles, back to you.
This is Charles again speaking. Thank you, Sylvia. Thanks for the update. And I want to welcome again anybody participating and watching this forum. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please look at the tab at the bottom of the screen featuring the Q&A. You can write a question out there, and after our panel discussion toward the end of this session, we'll go to the Q&A box and attempt to answer any questions that we receive. Any questions that we're not able to get to during the session, there will be an FAQ, a frequently asked questions page featured on our website after the forum. Thank you. So next up, we'll hear from Jenny Scheid, representing our enforcement division. Jenny?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Scheid, and I am a manager at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I apologize for my voice. My allergies are bothering me a little today, but I'm going to do my best to convey the information I have. So I'm going to talk to you today about filing a complaint with our department, as well as the complaint investigation process. If a person wants to file a complaint with our department, they can contact us through the phone. We have an 800 number of 800-482-3604. You can also contact us online on our website at www.michigan.gov/MDCR. You can also contact us in writing, or you can contact us in person. However, please note, as Charles mentioned earlier, that our offices are currently closed and we are all working remotely. There are 5 main areas of jurisdiction that we can take a complaint on in order for us to investigate. Those 5 areas are employment, housing, education, public accommodation, and public service. Please note that public service does also include law enforcement. If a person believes that they have been discriminated against, they do have a 180-day time frame in which to file a complaint with our department. That means that you need to contact us. We need to have you sign a complaint in the presence of a notary, and return it to us within 180 days for us to be able to investigate your concern. We've also talked about the 2 state laws that we have that involve the Michigan Civil Rights Department. And those 2 state laws are the Michigan Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act and the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Those 2 state laws combine together to be able to include 13 different protected classes that we can take complaints. Those complaints are based on religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, disability, height, weight, arrest record, marital status, familial status, and genetic information. We also have 2 federal partners that we work with to investigate complaints. Those 2 federal partners are the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, otherwise known as the EEOC. They work with us regarding employment cases. And the other one is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And we work with HUD regarding housing cases. Next slide, please. So our complaint investigation process starts when a person contacts our department to file a complaint. When they do that, they are in contact with our customer service representatives in our intake division. Our customer service representatives will evaluate the information provided by the person who's filing the complaint. They will evaluate it to make sure that it meets with our jurisdiction. And then they will send the complaint to the person so that they can sign it in the presence of a notary and return to us. Once we receive the complaint back, that complaint is then forwarded to our civil rights investigators. Our civil rights investigators will send a copy of that complaint to our respondents for them to provide a written response. They will collect additional information from both parties and any documentation that each party or a third party may provide. They can also attempt to resolve a matter between the parties. They will also interview any witnesses that are relevant or any decision makers that are relevant to the case. And in some instances, they may even conduct on-site visits to the areas in question. At the conclusion of a full investigation, an investigative report is written and submitted to the manager for review. Now, the investigative report will either recommend by the investigator to either dismiss the case, which means that the complaint does not have enough information to support the evidence in the case to show that discrimination has occurred. If that happens, the case is dismissed, but a person can still file a request for an appeal and a reconsideration, but more about that in the next presentation. The other option is that if there is enough evidence to support that a case should move to the next stage in our process, then that case is written up and suggested that it move to conciliation. The conciliation process is where our staff attorneys are assigned the case to advocate on behalf of the claimant to attempt to resolve the matters between the parties. However, if a case is not resolved in conciliation, then the complaint investigation process can continue into the next stage, which is issuing a charge of discrimination, doing a Rule 12 hearing, having the Michigan Civil Rights Commission issue a decision, and even an appeal into the circuit court and to the court system. But there's going to be more about that, about the charge, hearing, decision, and appeals by my next presenter, Marcelina Trevino. But I believe before we get there, we're going to take a moment just to do a quick interpreter switch. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we did that. Thank you, Jenny. So again, next up, we have Marcelina Trevino, who's going to provide an update on the Division of Law and Policy, Office of Legal Affairs. Marcelina.
This is Marcelina Trevino speaking. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm so happy to be with you today. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the Office of Legal Affairs at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Before I get into more of what Jenny touched on, I'd like to talk a little bit about our makeup. So the Office of Legal Affairs is made up of staff attorneys, including myself, who are all assigned to one of the enforcement teams, if not more than one. In addition, our Legal Affairs Office has a Freedom of Information Coordinator, as well as a research specialist who is also our designated Michigan Department of Civil Rights States Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator, and you'll hear more about that later on. Now I'd like to talk about the Office of Legal Affairs role. Jenny touched on a little bit where really our staff attorney and legal team gets involved with the investigation and case. At this point, she talked about the conciliation. Now, if a conciliation conference, which is the meeting that our staff attorney has with the respondent, is unsuccessful to resolve the matter, we can issue a charge. What a charge is a formal document that we draft stating all of the allegations with the evidence that we've accrued throughout the investigation. And what happens is that that formal document is then set up for a Rule 12 hearing and submitted to have a hearing. Now, I say Rule 12 hearing, and what does that mean? Our department, as you heard from Sylvia with the commission, we are the administrative branch of that, and we are made up of rules to follow and operate. So that Rule 12 hearing is actually in the Michigan Civil Rights Commission rules. And what that hearing does is allows our staff, our legal team, to present the case in front of an administrative law judge. It also allows the respondent to present their case. The administrative law judge at that point will give a recommendation that will then be sent to our Michigan Civil Rights Commission. As Sylvia mentioned, the commission has the authority and power to make a decision on the case. And in their order and final decision, they have the power to issue damages and any other type of equitable relief. Now, you will hear more about the enforcement unit at a future forum, which I hope you all attend. Now, our legal team also provides all types of different support to enforcement, not just at the legal stages of a complaint and case. We also offer legal guidance to the entire department. The FOIA unit, or Freedom of Information unit, is where our Freedom of Information Act coordinator sits and works with. Now, what is Freedom of Information Act and what does it do? What does the unit do? Well, you as a citizen, myself, and all of us have a right to inspect and review and have copies of most public records as we are a public body. So you may do that by doing a written request to the FOIA coordinator at our department. And more information on that is on our website, along with an email address if you'd like to ever submit a Freedom of Information Act request. Lastly, I'd just like to touch on the reconsideration unit that actually sits with the Law and Policy Office. Now, I'm going to back up with Jenny speaking about the possible findings of an investigation. When our department, one, does not take a complaint due to various issues, maybe they're non-jurisdictional, maybe they're untimely or something else, everyone has a right to appeal. That appeal can be in writing within 30 days, or if we didn't take a complaint, within the 180 days jurisdictional timeframe. Now, when we have actually done an investigation and issued a finding of dismissal where there's insufficient evidence or not enough information to proceed with the complaint, you also have a right to appeal within 30 days of the date of dismissal. With that, again, I'd like to recommend that you all come to the future forums to hear more about the Enforcement and Legal Division. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Charles, I'll turn it back over to you.
This is Charles speaking again. Thank you, Marcelina. And next up, we'll hear from Annie Uraski about the Division on Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing. Annie?
Hi, this is Annie speaking. Thank you, Charles. As mentioned, my name is Annie Uraski, and here is my name sign. I am the director of the Division on Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing. I'm really happy to be here today, and I want to talk a little bit about our unit. We were the first state agency office established for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing in the United States, specifically the deaf and hard of hearing, and we were established in 1937. I want to talk about our mission. We are committed to advocacy for effective communication for Michigan residents who identify as deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. We know that from the total state population, we have an estimated 4.7% of Michigan residents that identify as deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. In the work that we do, we also have a 13-member governor-appointed advisory council. That advisory council provides input, recommendations, and guidance for our division. The advisory council meets 3 times a year. Some of the key things in the work that we're doing, of course, is we want to make sure we increase the knowledge and awareness. We want to elevate education about the needs of the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing residents in this state. And that includes understanding the concept of what effective communication actually means. Understanding what equal access to information means, whether it be in American Sign Language, in language, or through assistive technology. We know that there are many people out there that don't understand what it means to be deaf, blind, or hard of hearing. So our job is to advocate for increased awareness about the needs, the experiences, and the barriers that people in our community experience. We do that through collaboration and working with other Michigan state government agencies, external partnerships, and community stakeholders on the needs of our community. Some examples of the things that we provide is cultural expertise training, outreach, education, and advisory or recommendations on what it means to secure an interpreter, provide interpreting services, what captioning services are, assistive technology options available. And what we also do as a division is really elevate the awareness within our community and ensure that we make the state of Michigan a more inclusive state for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing who call Michigan home. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Charles.
This is Charles speaking. Thank you, Annie. That was great information. Next up, we're going to hear from Kelly Frake about the State ADA Compliance Division. Kelly?
Thank you, Charles. This is Kelly Frake. I'm really excited to be with you all and grateful to our Community Engagement Division for putting this together. I will only be able to touch on a few things today. I could talk about the ADA forever, but we will be having other sessions upcoming where we will be able to provide more information. So just so everyone is aware, 2020 is actually the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is the federal law that provides protections to individuals with disabilities and protects them from disability discrimination. We will be having a series of ongoing ADA 30 educational events, virtual events, through the end of the year. If you're interested in more information on those educational events, we have a website at www.michigan.gov/ADA30. That's www.michigan.gov/ADA30. So as was mentioned earlier, Michigan does comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act as well as the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. The ADA is the federal law, meaning it applies in all 50 states, and Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act is our Michigan state law that protects persons with disabilities. We also have an executive order that was passed by former Governor Jennifer Granholm. It's number 2004-31. In this executive order, the state ADA coordinator position was formally established. Our state ADA coordinator for Michigan is Kim Woolridge. She's my boss. And the designation also went a step further to require that executive branch departments like MDCR, the Treasury Office, Department of Transportation, Department of Education, all of the executive branch departments were required to designate a department ADA coordinator. So MDCR has one, MDE has one, all of the executive branch departments have a designated ADA coordinator. I have included a link to the State of Michigan ADA coordinators on this slide. We'll be providing the slides later on to the public. You can also access this information by going to the bottom of every single State of Michigan website and clicking on the ADA link at the bottom of the page. The website to access this information is also www.michigan.gov/ADA. So our state ADA compliance division does a number of things. Mainly, we coordinate ADA compliance within the executive branch departments. So what this means is we will partner with departments like Secretary of State, with DTMB, to ensure that voting is accessible to persons with disabilities in Michigan, to help ensure that our websites are accessible to screen readers and people with disabilities in Michigan. And this is how we help the departments ensure that they're meeting their requirement under the Americans with Disabilities Act and not discriminating against the public. We also serve as the ADA liaison on behalf of the governor's office. So we keep her informed as to what the challenges are that are facing the disability community, what are the current topics that the governor's office needs to be aware of. And finally, we oversee the state's ADA grievance procedure. So while you can and should file a complaint with Michigan Department of Civil Rights based on disability discrimination from an employer or a place of public accommodation like a grocery store, hotel, hospital, you can use the state ADA grievance procedure if you are ever unable to access a state program, service, or activity. So for example, if you wanted to come to a public meeting that was hosted by a state department, and you needed to have captioning provided, or you needed to have an ASL interpreter provided, and for whatever reason that wasn't provided, or they failed to provide that for you, you can use the grievance procedure to go directly to that department's ADA coordinator and request that they fix this, or request that they provide you that accommodation for the public meeting or event. Next slide, please. So in general, how we coordinate compliance, we do a lot internally, but I'll just mention a couple things here today. One of the main things is that we conduct ADA training internally for our departments, as well as for those department ADA coordinators. So my boss, Kim Woolridge, our state ADA coordinator, as well as myself, are responsible for training the department ADA coordinators and ensuring that they understand what their role is and how they should be servicing the public and what they need to be aware of when it comes to making their departments accessible. We also oversee some statewide accessibility initiatives. We work very closely with DTMB, for example, our Department of Technology, Management, and Budget. And we work with them a lot on ensuring that the websites are accessible, any PDFs that are posted are accessible, and any applications that the state uses for programs and services are also accessible to persons with disabilities. We partner, obviously, internally with our own state departments. We also partner externally with advocacy organizations throughout the state of Michigan. And finally, and most importantly, we do provide guidance and perspective to state leadership. It is very important when you're trying to get departments to understand why they need to provide ASL interpretation, why they need to provide captioning, that they understand the challenges that the disability community is facing and how not having these things creates a barrier to state government for a large portion of the Michigan population. And finally, along those same lines, while we exist to help the departments meet their ADA compliance goals, we exist to help them abide by the law, we really do this because we are here to serve you. We are here to not just comply with the law, but to make sure that all of our state programs are accessible to persons with disabilities, so that you should be able to access any program, service, activity that a state department offers, regardless of whether or not you have a disability. So I do encourage you to utilize those state ADA coordinator and the departmental ADA coordinators. Reach out to us if you have questions. Reach out to those department ADA coordinators if you need an accommodation. We're here for you and we are happy to help. And with that, I'll turn it back to Charles. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. This is Charles speaking again. And as I listen to that good information, I anticipate there may be a question. So when we work in state government with other agencies or organizations, we often use acronyms. I noticed DTMB was used. I'll just explain to the viewers that may be watching. That stands for the Department of Technology, Management, and Budget. And I think it's also timely at this point to mention again and reiterate that if you have questions, this is for our live viewers. If you have questions about any of the information that you've heard thus far or going forward about our presentation, please note the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. If you add any questions to that chat box or the Q&A box, we'll do our best to get to those questions at the end of this session, toward the end of the program after the panel discussion. Those questions we're not able to answer because of time. Look for an FAQ on our website following the forum. Okay, so next up we have Anthony Ianni, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the Relentless Tour. Anthony?
Thank you, Charles. This is Anthony Ianni speaking. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well, having a great day so far. So again, my name is Anthony Ianni, and I run the department's anti-bullying initiative, the Relentless Tour. So a little bit of background on the Relentless Tour. The Relentless Tour was started by me back in October 2013, so a little over 7 years ago. And it is the first grassroots initiative of its kind to eradicate bullying in the state of Michigan. This was an initiative of its kind that was never done before. So launched in 2013, 7 years later, still the first of its kind to ever do it. And the purpose of the Relentless Tour is telling my stories growing up with autism. I was diagnosed with autism in 1993 at age 4. And then I went on to become the NCAA's first Division I college basketball player to play with an autism diagnosis for Tom Izzo in Michigan State. So for all you Spartans out there, go green, go white. And so I tell my stories in schools in grades, in grades 3 through 12 about my stories growing up with autism and how I was bullied because of my autism and because of my height. So I go in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, charter schools, and private schools. And the messages around the Relentless Tour is 2 messages. One is to be careful what you say and do to others in life, because you never know who that person will end up being like in the future. And as well as don't just go out and be the change, but go out and make that change you wish to see in life as well. And another interesting aspect about the tour is another reason why I was started is because individuals with autism are the #1 targets for bullies in schools across the United States. So the average is 65 to 90% of kids with autism in our country are the #1 targets for bullies in schools across the United States. So that's one of the main reasons why I started the tour. And in the last 3 years, the tour has visited over 400 schools and events around the state of Michigan and around the country, and has reached over 173,000 individuals around the state and around the country as well. So we're doing great work in the anti-bullying field. We're looking forward to another strong year as well, another year of high numbers. If anybody is interested in booking me for this upcoming school year, we are going to do virtual events, virtual presentations as well. Please visit the website, which is www.relentlesstour.com. Again, that's www.relentlesstour.com. Go on and click on the link on the page that says bring Anthony to your school, and you'll fill out a request form. The request form will come to me, and then you get to work directly with me. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Hope to see you all this upcoming school year. And Charles, I'll turn it back over to you.
This is Charles speaking. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for sharing that information and doing the important work that you do. Next up, we'll hear from Alfredo Hernandez, who will talk about our equity office.
Hi, thank you, Charles, and thank you, Anthony, and everyone here for creating this space to help us all understand a little bit better what is the Department of Civil Rights and what services we provide. My name is Alfredo Hernandez, and I serve as the Equity Officer for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. The Equity Office was established in January of 2018 with the purpose of overseeing internal and external initiatives centered on creating and or increasing racial consciousness and cultural awareness to operationalize equity long-term. The Equity Office established MDCR's internal DEI initiative and a core team made up of directors and staff from all units and divisions in August of 2018. We immediately began the work of understanding at a deeper level the root causes of discrimination and the impact of implicit bias at the personal, interpersonal, institutional, and structural level. This initiative has led us to countless hours of internal work with state and national experts, and it currently serves as a template for organizational cultural shifting and racially conscious guidelines statewide. Consequently, the Equity Office provides customized training solutions to help organizations and state agencies explore and understand how implicit bias impacts us, the work we do, and the people we serve. As the importance of this work continues to grow and be recognized at the highest levels of the state, we're excited to serve and lead the growth in this work as we embrace Executive Directive 2020-9, which mandates implicit bias training at the state level and places MDCR as a leading agency equipped with the educational content required to provide implicit bias training. The Equity Office established its Council for Government and Education on Equity and Inclusion in 2018. The Council, which is made up of statewide leaders in government and education, meets twice a year to share best practices and explore solutions through a racial equity lens. The Equity Office is also certified in the Intercultural Development Inventory, a globally recognized tool designed to help organizations measure, monitor, and evaluate cultural shifting. We're using this tool internally and externally by providing coaching and guidance in this work. The Equity Office collaborates with experts in the field of equity and remains engaged and connected to the most current research through the work taking place at the Government Alliance on Race and Equity and other state and national resources, such as the National Equity Project, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and the Kirwan Institute, amongst others. The Equity Office is also a member of the Task Force on Racial Disparities established by the Governor's Office, and as an advisory body, developing strategies to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 throughout communities of color. MDCR continues to be engaged in this work. For more information regarding our work, you may reach me via email at hernandeza3@michigan.gov or by phone at 517-249-1731. Thank you very much.
This is Charles speaking. Thank you, Alfredo. And at this point, I'll ask if an interpreter switch needs to happen. We'll take a moment to pause for that. No? Okay, we're all good. So I just wanted to thank my colleagues for all of the informative content they've provided thus far. We appreciate that. And at this point, I'm going to hand over the reins to Anthony Lewis. He's the director of our Community Engagement Division, to talk to you a little bit more about that. So, Anthony?
Charles, thank you very much. And I just want to say, hopefully you've gotten the opportunity so far to see just a brief explanation of our different divisions. And please stay tuned, because we will be focusing on the Enforcement Division along with our Office of Law and Policy will be the next featured division, and that will be August 17th. So please look out for that. So thank you, Charles, once again for throwing it to me. This is Anthony Lewis speaking, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Business and Community Affairs for the Community Engagement, within the Community Engagement Division. And our mission here in this division is really to enhance communication around common issues. We also like to we design and maintain partnerships and initiatives that further the mission of MDCR, the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And then we will explain some of those, our core initiatives and core partnerships coming up shortly. But we also facilitate outreach and education with relationship building, which also ties into our core, through some of the core work that we do. But we work with communities, organizations, educational institutions. We have the opportunity to work with everyone in building those relationships, and we'll get into that a little bit further. But who are we? Who are we? Who constitutes the Community Engagement Division? Well, first, obviously, you have myself, but you also have my colleague, Mark Bishop, who is Director of Strategic Operations here in the Community Engagement Division. We have Jeanette Johnson, affectionately called JJ, our communication specialist. And we also have Ms. Sheila Hersey, who we like to call as the glue. You know, behind the scenes, she's the one that holds us all together. Behind the scenes, she's the one that takes care of, that really ensures that all of us are operating smoothly. She's our administrative support. And you've already met Charles Schroeder, who's our community civil rights specialist. We also have Ms. Gwen Moffitt, our community engagement liaison in West Michigan, and we will hear more about the work of Gwen and Charles coming up shortly. Gwen is primarily based in our Grand Rapids office. We also have Marissa Gomez Garcia, another community engagement liaison, focusing on the Hispanic Latino community, also based out of our Lansing office, but also primarily working in West Michigan. And we also have Melissa Keysweater, who is our tribal liaison and our Native American specialist. And a lot of the work but Melissa does, in addition to working with Alfredo, also in the equity office. So first, I want to break down just a brief overview of some of our core initiatives and some of our core partnerships that we spoke of before. First is the Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust, which originated out of Detroit and is currently facilitated in Detroit by the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. And if you'd like to hear more about the Detroit area and the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion, you could please go to MRDI or miroundtable.org. Next, we have the Kellogg Foundation, has what's called the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Enterprise. And Gwen Moffitt, one of our team members, will be explaining that and what that is about a little bit further. Then we also have our crisis response team. And my colleague, Mark Bishop, will be discussing what that is and also the difference between things like a hate crime and a bias incident. And then we also have our Civil Rights Youth Academy, which is our opportunity to develop the next generation of civil rights leaders. And I have to say that we are excited because in one of our future forums, it will be entirely led by the fellows of the Civil Rights Youth Academy in partnership with the University of Michigan. So the first question I want to bring to Charles. Now, Charles, how would you describe your work?
My work in general, I see the screen up there. So in addition to being the Arab, Muslim, and Middle Eastern community liaison, I like to say my colleagues and I in the community engagement division are really the face and voice of the department. We're charged and tasked with having, in normal times, a physical presence in communities. Again, as was mentioned several times earlier, we now do it however we can, virtual presence, telephonic presence, making sure that we're in touch and in tune with communities and the issues that they're facing so that we can answer any questions they may have as it relates to civil rights and their protections. And where we hear violations or alleged violations of the law, making sure that they know how to get back to our department to file formal complaints, to have those issues addressed, and hopefully get those issues resolved throughout that process. So back to the slide that you see before, one of our, I think our barriers that we all recognize here within the department is making sure that people know and are aware of our services, and where they don't hear of us or see about us, they can't fully utilize our services. And that's true throughout the state. However, we also recognize that in ethnic and even immigrant communities, there may be an added layer of fear or trepidation in reaching out to a government agency for assistance. So my colleagues and I, working in different ways, really work to overcome those barriers. I do that work in the Arab, Muslim, Middle Eastern community, and that's through attending functions, community functions, events, and initiatives that they host, having that physical presence, being there, not only participating in events, but really being proactive in making sure that they know and hear us as a voice, as a resource to meet their needs where it's applicable. One of the ways that we do that is through coordinated partnerships, and two that we're very proud of are with Access, which is the social services organization based in Dearborn, founded in Dearborn, but really has a presence throughout the region, and they do great work there. And also the ACRL, which is the Arab Civil Rights League. And those two partnerships are coordinated in a way that when they, in their daily operations, as they meet with their clientele, if they hear an issue that may fall under our jurisdiction or purview, they have direct connects with members of our enforcement team, investigators assigned to those two entities to hear those concerns, take those complaints, and investigate those matters. So I oversee those partnerships and make sure that any barriers to those running optimally are reduced, and that they can be a fully functioning, receptive resource to those organizations. But again, my colleagues and I work very similarly in our respective areas of purview. So can't wait to hear and for them to share information as well.
Thank you, Charles. I have one more question for you. Now, so how do you believe your work has impacted the communities that you serve?
Well, so that is a great question. And as you pose that question, I think back, I take personally as one of the greatest compliments that I received prior to, COVID and the situation we're dealing with. I was at a community event in the Arab community, and I was introduced to a colleague of someone that I had known for some time. And he said, "I'd like you to meet Charles Schroeder with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. He's at everything." And to me, I could not receive a greater compliment or accolade. And it takes a whole lot of work for my colleagues and I to really be at everything that we're able to, or have a presence. And again, that's turned remotely, but we're still working just as hard to make sure that we have a presence wherever we can be. And that just kind of speaks to the fact that although we are a department, I'll reiterate, small and mighty, we take very important the work that we do. So anywhere we have an invite or we can find our way in, we know that it's important we be there to put that face and voice behind the department so that people are always informed that we're there to serve where the need can be met. Thank you.
Well, Charles, thank you very much. And we'll be coming back a little bit later on when we'll bring all of our team together to answer any questions you may have. So next up, Melissa, I have a question. So how would you describe your work?
Am I up? Is that what you were requesting, Tony?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So I am the tribal liaison and the Native American specialist for the Department of Civil Rights. My name is Melissa Keysweater. Typically I introduce myself in the language. So I will do that for one brief moment. Ani, which is hello. Melissa Keysweater and Dishnakaz, Petoskey, Michigan, and Donjaba, Eaton Rapids, and Dinda. And what I offer to you is that Melissa Keysweater is what I am called. Petoskey, Michigan is where I'm from, and Eaton Rapids is where I live. And as Tony mentioned, I have a role in terms of serving as the tribal liaison and working with all 12 federally recognized tribes in the state of Michigan. And I also have the ability to work with all of the 574 tribes in the United States. I primarily address government to government related issues between the tribes and the state. I also provide technical assistance and work on matters related to the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver, which is a waiver of tuition for eligible Native students here in our state. I also serve as a board member for the Native American Heritage Fund, and then also serve as a the primary liaison on education-related matters. Many people are not aware that the tribal liaison position is actually something that is required by executive order of the governor. And our current administration, Governor Whitmer, renewed and restated that commitment to government relations in her executive order 2019-17. And so that does provide the framework and the guidance for how we interact with tribal communities and our federally recognized tribes, as well as require that each state agency has a point of contact as a tribal liaison. Additionally, the tuition waiver is bound by legislation. So it is a legislative mandate in terms of that students who are eligible can receive a waiver of tuition for through the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver, and that is based on legislation, Public Act 174 of 1976. There are a lot of components to serving as a tribal liaison, and every day can be very different. But the goal is really to work with our tribal communities and to raise the voice in ways that very often they are not included or recognized at the table for a lot of conversations. So that's one of the goals that I have every day, is to lift up and include that Native and Indigenous voice, as well as providing services and resources in ways that help them continue to practice and protect their sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Yes, Melissa, thank you very much. I do have one more question. I asked you the same question that we posed to Charles, and I know we have anecdotal, kind of stories of the impact that we are able to have on, with the work that we do. So I have a question. So how has your work impacted the communities that you serve?
Oh, well, that's a great question. First and foremost, I think when we're working with populations of color and minority populations, that trust is integral. It is a very critical component to those relationships and to being able to move the needle in terms of advocacy and change. So I've had the opportunity, and I've been very blessed to work for a particular tribe for about 10 years before joining the department. So having the relationship really allows me to be a point of contact for tribes, tribal citizens, their employees, and their elected officials. Anytime they have a question, even if it's not civil rights related, and they're looking for guidance or who to contact maybe in another state agency, a lot of times that those questions get directed to me. The other thing that I believe is important is the tuition waiver is certainly critical to the educational outcomes and success of our Native student population. So being able to handle those in a timely manner and provide that resource to students truly increases the viability and the sustainability of our tribal communities because they are achieving higher education. And so that impacts economics, that impacts their role and ability to contribute back to their own tribal communities as well as to the state as a whole. And so certainly we know that higher education is connected very, very significantly to other outcomes. And it's the goal of this administration to really encourage higher educational attainment through whether it's a certificate, a degree, what have you. So that tuition waiver program plays, again, a very integral role in helping tribal communities with their sustainability and their viability in this current time.
Thank you, Melissa. I just want to, and also, Melissa, I just wanted to highlight something that you said that I think is very important, because we are a resource. And something that you stated, that even if it's not civil rights related, people still reach out to you. And I think that that's important. An important aspect to stress that our team, as the front-facing, as the public-facing unit, one of the things is that we are a resource, and through the relationships and through the relationships that we built, even if it's not civil rights related, we are still a resource to be able to assist anyone, even if it means that we need to refer you or use our particular relationships to refer you to other agencies or to other, or other services. And I think that's very important. to understand that we also serve as just as a resource also. But Melissa, thank you very much. Next, Marissa, I have a question. So Marissa, how would you describe your work?
Hi, this is Marissa. But first I want to ask if we need to give a moment to do an interpreter switch.
You did it.
We're good? Can you repeat the question, Tony?
Oh, sure. Sure, Marissa. So how would you describe your work in your focal areas?
Well, Tony, the population that I serve is the Hispanic Latino community, and that includes immigrants, farm workers, refugees, and the undocumented. One of my primary focus is on farm workers, and how I do that is I attend and provide support to the Interagency Migrant Services Committee. They have monthly meetings that I attend, and I also provide support. I also provide support and attend the meetings of the 5 subcommittees of the IMSC. One example is the Data Task Force. And when time permits, I also try to go to the Migrant Resource Council meetings. There are 9 Migrant Resource Councils throughout the whole state, and each Migrant Resource Council covers several counties. During COVID-19, I actually have had the opportunity to cover more Migrant Resource Councils because I don't have to actually be on the road because we are only doing virtual meetings. Another of my responsibilities is to connect with other community organizations, such as the Latino Community Coalition that is held in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Collaborative that is held in Lansing, Michigan. And like I said, at this time, we are doing only virtual meetings. I also engage in special projects, and one of the special projects that I was engaged recently was the 2020 enumeration profile study.
All right, Marissa, thank you very much. Now, I actually have another question for you because, well, one, how would you have kind of a double-edged question? How has your work impacted the communities that you serve, but also being a representative and being representative of the community that you serve? Would you mind giving a little bit of your background and the connection that you have to the community that you serve?
Okay, thank you, Tony. This is Marissa Gomez Garcia again. I will give my background first. Actually, my parents came to the United States as immigrants, and my father did farm work, so did my mother. But I also was involved in doing farm work from 12 years old to 19 years old, and that would have been the summer before I started college in Orlando, Florida. Eventually, my father became a crew leader and did not pick any fruit or vegetables, but brought the labor that farmers needed in Michigan and in Florida to harvest their crops. In Michigan, my father worked for apple growers and blueberry growers. In Florida, he worked for growers who harvested oranges. And from kindergarten through the summer before I started college, I would live in 2 states every year, Michigan and Florida. Well, Tony, one of the things that I was involved in right before COVID-19 that would have impacted the farm worker community was the 2020 enumeration profile study. And unfortunately, it was canceled due to COVID-19 and the budget concerns caused by COVID-19. But like I said, that would have impacted the farm worker community quite a bit. And actually, enumeration profile studies have been done before. And the last one that was completed was in June 2013. So it was time to do a new one, but unfortunately it was canceled due to COVID-19. Individuals involved in that project were members of the data task force, a few Michigan Department of Civil Rights co-workers, myself, Lee Gonzalez, and Levita Shackelford. Also, we had an employee with DTMB, which is the Michigan Department of Technology and Management and Budget, and her name is Joy Nakfor. I apologize if I pronounced that badly, but those are some of the individuals that were involved with this project up until the time that it was canceled. This project has two primary goals, and the first goal is to do an updated census of all the agricultural workers in Michigan, and that would be migrant, seasonal, year-round. An example of a year-round farm worker is a dairy worker, and also the H-2A temporary agricultural foreign guest workers. It also would have included a count of the non-agricultural family members. The second goal of the study, the second goal of the enumeration would have been conducting an agricultural worker conditions survey. And we would have learned a lot of things from that survey, but one of the things we would have learned is the ability to identify barriers encountered by agricultural workers or their family members. Some examples would be those related to the pursuit of childcare, civil rights, education, employment, housing, healthcare, legal services, or other public benefits or services.
All right, Marissa, thank you very much for that for introducing yourself and showing that connection and the work that you do. Next up, I want to have Charles. I want to ask Charles to come back because as a facilitator of our ALPAC, which is the Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust, could you come back and kind of give us a brief overview of this particular initiative? Its history and how it has impacted the state.
Absolutely, but I also want to go back to some great points that Marissa had made. One in particular, as my colleagues and I provide informational and training sessions throughout the state, as we're giving presentations and when we work with ethnic or immigrant communities, we stress, as she did, that if you file a complaint or contact our department, we don't ask about citizenship or status. You still have civil rights protections being in Michigan, no matter what your citizenship or status may be at the time. So just wanted to make that point and add to that great information. So in terms of ALPAC, as you see up on the screen, there's a brief synopsis of the information related to ALPAC. It's an acronym for Advocates and Leaders for Policing Community Trust. It was really born out of, and it was previously mentioned by Anthony at the beginning of the session, it was born out of leadership in Detroit from the law enforcement and community advocacy side. And those leaders within the community had made the decision that they really needed a venue and an initiative to address issues happening within the city and in Metro Detroit, which they believed were affecting deeper levels of trust between law enforcement and community. So they designed the ALPAC to be, again, a feature of community leadership and law enforcement professionals who made the intentional decision to meet consistently to, as it says there, examine issues affecting police and community relations and ensure equitable enforcement of laws. The previous leadership, Dr. Dan Crickbaum, who's affiliated with now Michigan Roundtable, was the NCCJ, was a pioneer in that initial ALPAC in Detroit. And after he became our executive director at the MDCR, he wanted to see that model replicated throughout the state. And this goes back several years. So while the original ALPAC in Detroit was formed some 25 years ago, we really started bringing it to other communities about a decade ago, and brought the concept, MDCR brought the concept to different communities, showed them the model, and shared some of the success stories that they had with the initiative down in Detroit. And those communities really embraced it all throughout the state, and we have several chapters. In my work, I help to convene the sessions in Flint and Saginaw and provide input for programming in the Detroit initiative. How has it affected the state? How has the state benefited? So from my experience, and many of you probably have seen news coverage related to and referencing the All Pact, most notably after the tragic death of George Floyd. If we could just take a moment, please, for the life and memory of George Floyd. Thank you. After that tragedy ensued, and we saw mass protests, not only throughout the country, but right here within the state, those involved with the All Pact initiatives had pointed to some of the success that they saw and deemed relatively peaceful protests, which led to opportunities for productive dialogue. They attributed the All Pact effort and the work that really they invested in their communities for years as a benefit to seeing mostly peaceful protests. One notable news story that most of you have probably seen was the sheriff in the Flint or Genesee County area, who really met protesters with a peaceful narrative, put down his equipment and walked with and conversed with protesters, and that got national headlines. And their law enforcement entity, as well as others within Flint and Genesee County, are members of the All Pact initiative. And some of those other members have pointed to All Pact and the relationships they've built and fostered there as being responsible for what they saw. So again, that's testimonials from those outside of our internal shop and the work that we do, providing a testament to what they feel the value in All Pact has been for their communities and the state. Thank you.
All right, Charles, thank you very much. And now I have a question for our colleague, Gwen. Gwen, how would you describe your work, and how has that impacted the communities that you serve?
Thank you, Tony. I am going to allow time for an interpreter switch. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Gwen Moffett, and I am the West Michigan Community Engagement Liaison, and I'm based in our Grand Rapids office. I'm responsible for community engagement in the communities of Battle Creek, Benton Harbor, St. Joe, Grand Rapids, of course, Holland, Kalamazoo, and Muskegon. This engagement takes place through continuous meeting interactions with individuals and representatives of community organizations and institutions in these geographical spaces. I am also the coordinator and facilitator of MDCR's All Pact chapters that my colleague Charles was just discussing in West Michigan. These include All Pacts in Battle Creek, Berrien County, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo County, and Ottawa County. I assist with the planning of steering committee meetings and community forums to support engagement between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Additionally, I serve as MDCR's partnership representative for the Kalamazoo Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Enterprise, a W.K. Kellogg Foundation initiative. And as you can see on the slide on the screen, that the goal of this initiative, this enterprise, is to jettison the belief in a hierarchy of human value that sustains racism. Sometimes there are individuals who think that they may be superior to different others, but as we think about humanization, and certainly recently, or most recently with George Floyd's death, we can see that there's a need for much more of that particular work. This initiative, or this enterprise, was developed by W.K. Kellogg Foundation and 174 national partners to help communities heal and produce sustainable change. There are 14 sites across the US, 4 of which are in Michigan: Battle Creek, Flint, Kalamazoo, and Lansing. Thank you, Anthony.
All right, Gwen, thank you very much. And like I said, we'll be asking a few more questions of our team shortly. Next, what I'd like to have is my colleague, Mark. If you could come up and discuss your work with the crisis response team, and also those differences that we discussed regarding the differences between what a hate crime is and a bias incident.
Thank you, Tony. Mark Bishop. I'm the Strategic Operations Coordinator for the department. And from a historical perspective, I think one of the important things for us to acknowledge and recognize is that following the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, which actually dates us, Tony, because we've both been here 20 years. The crisis response team from the department is something that the department put together to address issues or incidents of community tension and unrest. So what we're really looking at is how do we connect stakeholders, victims, advocates, communities with the right resources, the technical training and the technical assistance to address that unrest that happens in a community. So a lot of it is just actively monitoring, both locally at a state level and even nationally, to find the right partner, the right resource to address those conditions or concerns. So we work directly internally with our enforcement division if someone wants to come in and file a complaint because it's civil rights related. We also work where it's non-jurisdictional to us and assisting, let's say, a law enforcement agency, a school, a community municipal sort of entity through facilitated dialogues, through community forums, through training, and the rest to address whatever the problem is that's taking place. We also work directly with local, state, national, tribal, and federal law enforcement agencies, because the question you pose, what's the difference between a hate crime and a bias incident? Well, for there to be a hate or bias motivated crime, we have to have some criminal conduct. And that often gets lost in the mix of very legitimate victimization and belief that an individual is being singled out. And I just want to give a shout out to all of both our colleagues that we work with every day, as well as all of those stakeholders across the state and across the country that we work with. When it comes to this work being 24/7, 365. So you've heard a lot about individuals saying, well, I work specifically with this community. We're willing to work with anybody on anything at any time for purposes of alleviating the strains, the stresses, the lack of knowledge that result from or could create situations of unrest or tension within a community, however you might define a community, a school building, a school district, a municipality, or across the state. So a lot of the work that I do and others is how do we look over the horizon and predict things, but it's also in response. So the crisis response team looks at basically two issues. Is the system working? And if it is, okay. If it's not, how do we be the arbiters of truth? How do we provide a victim an understanding of what the hate crime statutes, state or federal, say? How do we work with a law enforcement agency responding to a hate crime to understand what the state and federal statutes say? And how do we fix what is present? And you've heard it mentioned before, you can always give us a call at 1-800-482-3604. You can also go online to our website and file a question or concern regarding your situation. But to dive down into your question, Tony, the difference between hate or bias motivated crime and a hate or bias motivated incident, in the criminal sense, it has to be a crime to begin with. And we've seen pre and post COVID, those situations where someone says or does something that is hateful, but it doesn't rise to the level of a crime. And understanding that, okay, there are limitations on jurisdiction, there are limitations on what law enforcement can do, there are limitations on what prosecutors can do. And helping individuals and communities understand that tension that can exist. At the same time, we often have to go to the other side of the equation and talk to those law enforcement agencies, those school administrators, those community leaders, those law enforcement agencies, those prosecutors, and say, but this is what is really happening. This is the real impact. And if you respond in the wrong way, or you respond and create additional tension, we can tell you from best practices, we can tell you from a technical aspect, these are the repercussions you're going to face. And it like I said, it's a constant 24/7, 365 sort of thing. So anyone that feels that they have been left out, well, I didn't hear my group represented. No, we work with intersectionality all the time. We're always looking to address, if it's creating tension and unrest, it's our concern. It may not be a full civil rights concern. It may not be a full hate crime, bias motivated crime concern. It may not get to the level of a bias motivated incident, but we're always concerned. 365, 24/7. I can tell you, I can tell the public here that's watching this feed, we're constantly monitoring for that kind of stuff. It's one of the joys, it's one of the burdens, but it's also our mission. And the other thing I would point out on our the slide that you're showing right now are some ways that individuals can address, can assist, can respond to victims of hate. And currently we have those broken down in different ways, where individuals can step forward. They can, going back even to Anthony Ianni and the Relentless Tour, how do I become less of a passive observer? And how do I become someone that's engaged in that process? So thank you for the question, Tony, and I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Now we just have a few minutes left, and we just have a few minutes left. So what I'm going to do is, here we have this is our information, but I'm going to look into all right. right, I'm going to stop our show, and now would ask for my team to show themselves as we get to. And now we have a couple of questions. First up, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. I want to say to our folks here, the first question is representing is for the Enforcement Division. And so understanding that the Enforcement Division will be the featured presenter August 17th. But I will ask these questions, and Jenny, if you could kind of give a brief response, and then give a brief response. First, are the investigators attorneys, and do they represent us throughout the investigation?
Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Scheid again. So when you file a complaint with our department and you're assigned an investigator, the investigators are not attorneys for at all. They're not an attorney for you. They do not advocate for you, because ultimately you have to remember that the complaints that we investigate, we act as an independent, neutral agency. So because of that, during the investigation, we have to be neutral. We have to be independent. So no, we do not advocate. We do not provide attorneys for claimants during the investigation process itself. And so if that is something that a person wants, we can provide them referral services for them to get that information that they need.
All right, thank you. And one more question for you, Jeff. I think we have a couple of minutes left. Is the department taking complaints when a resident believes that they have been discriminated against by their employers and public accommodations because of being diagnosed or experiencing symptoms of the coronavirus?
Tony, did you want me to take that one too?
Yes, please.
Sure, no problem. Yes, actually, we are taking complaints in those situations as well. We do have complaints that are coming in that we are handling and investigating currently involving COVID-19 from people who are disabled and or perceived to be disabled. And those complaints are being investigated by the Specialized Enforcement Unit that I manage here at the department.
All right, Jenny, thank you very much. And also I want to just once again, August 17th, our Enforcement Division will be the featured division. So all those questions and more, you'll be able to ask investigators. You'll be able to ask our attorneys direct questions regarding some of the regarding any of those concerns that you may have, or any questions you have about the operation of the Enforcement Division. So with one, we have a couple of minutes left. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask Gwen. Given with the current environment, with the civil unrest and with COVID-19 bringing a spotlight to the racial disparities, with your focus being in Grand Rapids, and what are some of the work and some of the impact of our work in Grand Rapids have you seen?
There are a number of venues that have been having meetings, whether it has been about defunding the police or whether it's the ongoing opportunity to educate the community, particularly with the Greater Grand Rapids All Pact. They have had a number of venues ranging from Viewing 13th, which is about incarceration, to the new hate crimes unit with the Attorney General's office. Also, we have had meetings regarding, or collaborative meetings with the West Michigan Restorative Justice Coalition. And so by interacting with these different organizations, a lot of things are happening. I also want to specifically mention that with the TRHT in Kalamazoo, one of the things, one of the opportunities that they have formed is to have racial healing practitioners. It's a cohort that deals with helping people deal with trauma. And it's about healing and transformation of the community. Thank you.
All right, Gwen, thank you very much. And now I will, and if anyone has any questions or concerns or anything on how to get involved, please contact our office. Mark gave out their phone number earlier, and also it's www.michigan.gov/MDCR. And now I will turn it over to Charles to allow us to take us home. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So this is Charles speaking again. I want to thank my colleagues for their great presentations and all the information they were able to share with our viewers. To our viewers, we would like to thank you for watching this introductory forum. It was designed to give you a feel for who we are and what it is we do. As was mentioned earlier, August 17th will feature exclusively our enforcement division and hopefully shed some deeper understanding and light on the work that they do, what it would look like if you contacted our department to file a complaint, and how that process unfolds. Again, I thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to watch this, and please reach out to us if you have a civil rights related concern or you thought we could be of service to you. And with that, have a good afternoon.